So thank you very much for joining us. What we're planning to do, just very quickly, actually, in sort of a 15-minute sort of presentation, is just go through the, if you like, the concept behind the Mastering Expertship program and who it's for. And I know that a number of you are on the call to, assess a good fit in terms of, potentially some of your experts. And I think that there may even be a couple of potential participants who are on the call thinking about, is this for them? So I'm going to share my screen. What I'm going to do is very quickly just go through 6 or 7 slides, which we of course can send you afterwards, to give you the sense of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and what's happened to the 1,500 experts that we've put through this program. And then really wanted to give people an opportunity to ask questions, of which I'm sure, typically most people have lots. So without further ado, let's kick on and do it. So I suppose the first really critical scenario is that we've called this program Expertship. And the reason we've done so is we wanted to make the distinction between leadership and expertship. So leadership obviously is people who are people leaders and what have you. And of course, there are many experts who run expert teams and do so very happily and really enjoy it and they find it very fulfilling and what have you. But there is a large group of experts out there in the world and in your organizations who don't want to be people leaders. In fact, they couldn't frankly think of anything worse. But they want to nevertheless progress their career. They want to keep building their skills and their knowledge and their capability. They want to become more influential. They want to add more value to your organization. And obviously the organizations want those experts to add as much value as possible. But our research over the years has shown that experts reach an inflection point, and it's really critical to their long-term development and their career fulfillment and how much they enjoy their work, what they do at that inflection point. And that's really what we want to just have a brief conversation about this morning. I might say that most people who come on the expertship program are in that second category of people who just want to be experts, but quite a few of them then do go on to become people leaders, because some of the skills that we talk about in the expertship program, enterprise skills as we call them, do in effect help them lead teams, lead people, and have more influence. So some people eventually go over to the dark side, as they would describe it eventually. And I'd make the point here on this slide that experts come in all sort of shapes, sizes, and domains. So I'm going to show you in a little while, 2 or 3 quite broad testimonials from people. But we've had scientists, IT, accountant, finance, legal, risk, marketing, HR, you name it. Anyone who's a real technical subject matter expert and who wants to really increase their influence and value add in their organization, this course is for them. And one of the things that the participants tell us is they really enjoy working with people from other domains. They look nervous. The IT person looks nervously at the legal person when they first sit down, even whether it's virtually or in a room, but they very quickly learn that they have far more in common than they actually have differences. Okay, so what does the journey look like? So this is a graphic trying to explain this inflection point that I was talking about. So on the left-hand side, you have seniority and influence. And you can see there's sort of 3 levels. There's a specialist level, which is just this piece here. There's the expert level, and quite a few of the people that we work with really are in this area. And then there's what we call the master expert level. And, a typical expert journey, in the early years, there's acquisition of technical knowledge and skills during this sort of period. That might take 5, 6, 7 years, might be quicker. And then there's this sort of journey up to expert level, which is more technical knowledge, more skills, but many more experiences. So experts, as we all know, really solve problems and are working on more and more complex stuff. But this really is the inflection point, because there's a couple of choices an expert can make at this point. They might not necessarily realize they're making the choice, of course. One is to go through this journey, what we call the blue journey, which is where in the later years, these sort of 15 to 20 years, they're basically doing the same thing. They've hit a technical ceiling. And the problem with that is it's increasingly repetitive work, and experts who go along this line can be perfectly happy and absolutely totally fulfilled with their work, but they can also feel stuck. That what's happened, is this what I'm going to be doing for the next 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years? A large number of experts who come on our programs are somewhere along this line. But there's an alternative, and the inflection point really is this piece here, where they go up to the master expert level, where they build their enterprise skills on top of their technical skills, and this gives them the ability to really interface very effectively with external people to the organization, people external to their technical domain inside their own organization. The research shows that people who have both enterprise skills and technical skills have, hugely more career choices. They're in demand, and they're generally more fulfilled because they have that ability to really add strategic value, just rather than at this level here add a lot of technical value. So, how do we, if this is the aspiration of experts, and I have to say, for most of the people who come on our programs, they were unaware of the orange path. And as soon as they were aware of it, they aspired to it. And in fact, I'd argue that they approach getting onto the orange path with military precision. They really, that's exactly what they want to aspire to, because they come on the program thinking they're as expert as they can be. And when they get a sense of how, by adding enterprise skills, they can add so much more value and do so many more interesting things, of course, they want it as quickly as possible. So how do we do this? Well, we do this program called Mastering Expertship, which is the starting point of their journey to this sort of mastery up the top here, where they become a thought leader, they become a guru, and they're really adding value. So most people who come on our program, it's not 3 areas really. Firstly, there's what I call the fast track. Very much a minority of people who come on the program are fast track. They are people who are, experts who are rapidly growing up to the expert level, and organizations really identify them as very talented and maybe in really mission critical functions or roles or domains. And they want to fast track and elevate this journey that we're talking about here. There are people who come on where it's the obvious next step. They've got to expert level. They're asking you, their organization or themselves or their managers, what's next? What's my next step? And there's lots of things they could do. They might go on a leadership program, but if they don't really want to be people leaders, or they haven't decided they do, the expertship program is an ideal choice for them. The majority of people who come on the program are probably what we call the energized group, which is where they've started along this path of flatlining, hitting the technical ceiling, and they want to break through it. And so these are the 3, and I've made the circle a little bit bigger to suggest that that's where a lot of people are, and obviously they could be anywhere along this line. So I might actually just stop sharing there and ask if there's any questions. And please feel free to come on video or talk to me in chat, or it's only a small group, so very happy to take any questions about that. I guess my question is, does that make sense? Who's going to win the prize for the first question?
Not a question, Alistair. It's Valerie speaking, even though it has Vic Quib there. I don't know why it's got that up there. I just want to say that it is just a brilliant program, and I and another colleague have attended, and we have had a lot of value out of it. We're attending today to just refresh what it's about as we try to portray that back to our business. So.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Well, that's much better than a question, Valerie, and that's obviously a glass of white wine that I owe you. So Let me kick on answering that question around, you know, what it's about. So this is, if this is the setup of, you know, a lot of people ask us who should come on the program, and this slide really is attempting to answer that question. Well, there is somebody here from Cenetex, Kelly Wills, on the left-hand side here, who, you know, sort of says, you know, it's one of my favorite quotes of people who come on the program. It made me realize there's so much more to being a technology person than the technology. You know, Tony is also, in fact, all three of these people happen to be in tech. You know, the trick here is really giving people the awareness that there is this additional set of skills that are very useful to a technical person. And, you know, I might say that a lot of the people who come on the program are not really keen to come on the program necessarily, because they're not aware that all these additional enterprise skills can really help them in their work. So how does it work? I'll do this very briefly, and then we can get some questions. The topics are all designed to be specifically useful for an expert. So you can see there it's building others' expertise and self-reliance, because very often senior subject matter experts become a single source of solution, and sometimes they hoard knowledge, and they're the only people who can fix things, and that's bad for them, and it's also bad for the organization. So we help them build their coaching skills so that they can transfer knowledge and skills and experience to others. Market context is where we help them understand that they need to, in order to be able to add really high value, experts need to understand the competitive or community environment in which they're operating, and take a bit more of an external focus. This actually means reading the strategy deck that the CEO sends around that normally technical experts, you know, file under to be read when I've really got nothing else to do. Stakeholder engagement is probably one of the most high value topics. It always appears in the development plans of experts. How do we actively manage our stakeholder map and our stakeholders? How do we make sure that these relationships are win-win and not just strategic and value add, not just transactional? And who's not on my stakeholder map that should be? So there's a lot of energy goes in, I think, for most experts who come to the program, in that stakeholder engagement piece. Collaboration is obvious, but unbelievably difficult in the complex organizations most experts work in today. Advanced stakeholder engagement really is, you know, influencing skills. You know, how do people are motivated? How do we, you know, use how well we know our stakeholders to engage them? And then you can see there's a knowledge strategy there, innovation and change, which they're heavily involved in. Personal impact really is about how are you experienced as an expert? What's your personal brand? Is it the personal brand that you want? You know, how might you change that? We very much talk a lot about communication, the way people present themselves, you know, the way that they understand the emotional impact they're having on others, and so on. Prioritization is a huge challenge for the vast majority of experts, because they have multiple masters, they're on multiple projects. How do they manage it all? How do they prioritize it? How do they manage expectations? How do they actually take control of their own destiny in terms of what they're doing? And then solutioning is pretty much what experts spend a lot of the time doing. So we talk about advanced solutioning skills. So that would give you a sense of the curriculum. It's based on this expertship model. So most experts are pretty good in this technical domain down here, expert knowledge and solutioning, and, you know, probably a bit more patchy when it comes to knowledge transfer. They probably haven't concentrated on building these skills in the relationship domain, because they haven't really felt they were important. But the expertship program, that's the key penny dropping moment, is when they realize these skills are really important. And then this here is the value domain, where, you know, if they're really good in this area, then they really enable organizations to get full value from them. This is where sort of innovation, new ideas, you know, creating new value, either saving money or coming up with new ideas that attract customers. So if experts can, you know, who come on the program are already good here, and can acquire these skills, they become really good, all-rounders. Just a very quick word on the way that the program is designed and delivered. It's our experience after sort of 5 or 6 years of running these programs and having put 1,500 experts through the program, you can't teach an expert anything. Experts need to decide that they want to learn something. And, by the way, I'm guilty of exactly the same crime. So we've created an environment where basically the experts learn from one another. The answer is in the room. The program is very practical. It's how are you going to go back and deploy this stuff. It's definitely coaching, not training. So we work very closely with individuals to help them figure out what changes they want to deploy in the way that they operate, and we really help them do that. And we manage all the logistics. So there are quite a lot of logistics in our programs because there's a bit of coaching, there's a bit of workshop, there's assessment, it's a very holistic type of approach. And you don't have to worry as the participant or the manager or the L&D or OD client. We manage all of the logistics for you because it's quite complicated. And then, funnily enough, Valerie, it's a quote from Catherine Proud here. I think Catherine nails something, and this comment would have come from her attending quite a few of the sort of graduation ceremonies, if you like, of people who've done the program, and then they had to do a presentation at the end to say, what have they learned and what are they going to do differently? And the most abiding thing that happens with almost all of the participants who go on the course is one of the first things they say in their presentation is thank you. Thank you for investing in me as a person rather than me as a technical person. And they very quickly can see the value. And of course, they say thank you because quite often they've been not press ganged into attending the program, but they've been encouraged to when they probably didn't think it was important. And then they've realized how important it is. It is quite a transformational moment for a lot of experts, particularly those ones who are stuck underneath the technical ceiling and can't break through. So I think that's the end of my presentation. So I'd be very happy to get feedback from you and answer any questions. Maybe if we all came onto camera, then we could race around and see. Debbie, because I can see you on the list, and you have a beautiful background.
It's where I want to be.
Yes, we all want to be. I couldn't agree with you more. So just have I described it as well as you needed it described, and have you any questions?
Absolutely, you have, and I have been a fortunate participant of the program in the last few years. So, absolutely, I think from my point of view, I think it'd be nice to know. I believe you've made some changes on the delivery, so it's delivered in chunks rather than a 5-day course, all that sort of stuff, and what benefits you've seen of that compared to the 5-day course. I think you've reiterated what we already knew, that it is for experts, and there's very little out there for people who have that expertise, and encouraging them to share that knowledge and to develop that knowledge as well. So no, you've described it perfectly.
And I will show you the new design, because obviously we've had to go virtual with everything. And so I will show that in a moment. Can I ask if there's any other questions so I know what to cover as I go through?
Alistair?
Yes.
I was just wondering, there's also options of individual coaching. What's the benefits of this over the other, and what would you kind of recommend?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Leanne's referencing the fact that we have a whole series now of accredited expertship coaches who are all capable of delivering the program and also obviously coaching people. So one alternative to sending people on the program is to simply engage an expertship coach, if you like, and do 6 or 9 sessions with that coach, one-on-one. And there are benefits to both sides. The individual coaching is more expensive, so we should say that up front, but clearly it's one-to-one, and it enables probably the coach to get under the skin of the expert to a greater extent, and the expert to have all of the time that they're on the program being devoted to them and their challenges. So some of our clients have used coaching where they feel that getting the person on the course and getting them to accept there are changes that they need to make is more of a challenge, and therefore the executive coaching side is a way of helping them support that individually. The individual coaching can also include the Expertship 360, which is the 360 survey and our diagnostic, if you like, at the front, which we strongly encourage, because most experts are very data driven, and as soon as they see the data and they see the feedback from people, it creates a burning platform for them. Generally speaking, those 360s are very positive experiences for people, but with 2 or 3 things where you really need to change this, and that's what you're hoping for. The downside of the coaching is that it's a single experience, and the expert doesn't get to mingle with other experts and doesn't get to see what they have in common with other experts, and also doesn't get to be exposed to maybe other industries or other technical domains, like a lawyer sitting next to a software developer, for example, who have an enormous amount in common, by the way. So they don't have that sort of social experience of exploring and seeing different perspectives and what have you from people. So it's a question really of which tactically I think, Leanne, you think would work best for that person. And sometimes it's in the level of commitment to the development that the person has. So if the person is very resistant, the expert's very resistant to change, then probably the one-on-one coaching is going to be more effective with them, because there's a focus and there's an opportunity for the coach to quickly build trust and then really challenge behavior. Whereas there's slightly less opportunity to do that in the group sessions. I'm hoping that answers your question, and what I might do is just share my screen again and answer the other question I was asked. So just to race down this slide. So the way it's currently done is this. If I just go down here, we'll get to it. So this is the way the program is designed. It's a bit of a small slide, so I might just take you through it. There are 2 ways that we can deliver this program. Historically, what we've done is we have delivered it as a 4.5-day face-to-face program, and usually there's 10 or 15 experts in the room, sometimes all from the same company, sometimes from a whole variety of companies. Pre-COVID, that was the way that we delivered it, and probably the biggest challenge was persuading people that a 4.5-day program, which had really gone out of style, if you like, was effective. Most of our clients, once they had piloted the 4.5-day program, completely embraced it, and I think we're running 2 or 3 4.5-day programs virtually, believe it or not, coming up for some clients. So Genesis Care, for example, are doing a 4.5-day expertship program for all their physicists and radiologists and what have you in a couple of weeks' time. But obviously COVID got in the way of that, and so what we've adopted is a small group coaching approach. So what happens is they do their Expertship 360 up front. They do a 1-day virtual workshop where we go through pretty much the slide deck I've just gone through and talk to them about expertship and get them to self-assess, get them to think about where they want their careers to go, get them to think about what's getting in the way of their progress. So really encouraging them to think slightly differently through that 1-dayer. Then they get their 360 feedback. There's a manager check-in and a manager check-out. Involving managers in the program is really critical. And then they do these pod sessions, 4 pod sessions, 4 people in a pod with 1 coach. And then they do this presentation checkout system at the end. I think, Billy, you were asking about whether or not what the difference was between the face-to-face and the pods. Interestingly enough, the pods are small group. Most experts who come on the program are introverts, and they're telling us that they really, really like the smaller group where they get personal attention and they don't have to meet too many people. So the social aspect of having sort of 10 or 15 people in a room, what gets lost on the swings, I think, is gained on the roundabouts in terms of the pods. Certainly, the quality of the presentations here has gone up dramatically since we have not required an expert to stand up live in front of 12 other people, and probably more, 20 in the room, and talk about themselves, which is an extremely uncomfortable experience for most people. Doing it, talking to a computer screen, much easier, and the quality of presentations is much higher. So, we've learnt a few things there. So I'm hoping that answers your question. Is everybody able to see that slide that I just showed, or maybe not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So other questions and thoughts? Have I wowed you with my description?
Do you, I have a question, Alistair. Do you try and mix up who's in those pods? So to get the benefit of people being exposed to other businesses and other, I guess, experts, do you try and mix up those pods, or is it really sort of up to a business if they want to put all people in one pod, or how do you sort of coordinate that bit, which probably isn't easy?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question, and actually it's a little easier than you might think. So there's two ways we can do it. First and foremost, if it's an in-house pod, that is to say, it's 4 people from the same organization, we do strongly encourage that there's 2 types of pods you can do. You can do birds of a feather. So for example, you could put 4 software developers together who may or may not work with each other. It's almost an intact team. And that has the benefit of talking very directly to them about their particular craft, and every concept that we went through, all those topics that we described, we can talk about those directly as, how does this manifest as a software developer? And if you're going to get up to a master expert level as a software developer, what sort of things do you need to do? So there's huge advantages of that really direct, super applied approach. So that's one type of pod, which is birds of the feather. Second type of pod is what we call the silo buster, which is where similarly, let's say it's a single organization, maybe it's bank, and you have experts from either different domains or different departments grouped together. So it does grow the knowledge of the whole organization. One of our clients, the ABC, uses the silo buster all the time. They always have someone from news, they have someone from entertainment, they have someone from regional, they have someone from national, they have maybe a producer. And part of the benefit that the experts on those ABC pods get is they really learn about what goes on in other parts of the business. And it's quite amazing how very often somebody in news, for example, has absolutely no idea that the ABC does these other things, over in the Endcon, even though they work for the organization. So that's the silo buster. And then the third type is what we call multi-client, which is where we would encourage you to send, a single expert or maybe 2 to a pod where other organizations are represented. Typically we would have 3 or 4 people in those pods, and they'd be from quite different industries, sometimes from different domains. We make sure that they're not competitive, of course. The value that Dom and I, who have delivered a lot of these multi-client ones together, across the system, the benefit of the multi-client ones are that people get exposed to other industries, which they really enjoy. They regularly tell us that, that quite often, as I showed in that very first slide, they've been working for the same organization or in the same specialism for quite a while, or maybe the same industry. They might be in financial services, but they've worked in 2 or 3 companies, all in financial services. So suddenly working with an FMCG company or a government department or not-for-profit is a really opening experience for them, and that really helps expand their external take on the world. So there are pros and cons of each, and we work very closely with you to make sure that your participants are being put in the right type of pod for the right reason. Thank you for a great question, Debbie.
No, fantastic. No, that's good, because I know that my experience we've had as feedback to the business is people have enjoyed that mix with other businesses, realising, yep, we all have the same issues. It doesn't matter where we are, who we are. We've all got the same challenges and need, and can work on the same things. So I think that's valuable. Thank you.
All right. So any other questions before we finish up? We've used our half an hour, I think. So happy to answer any other questions, or indeed to take a call from you if you had something specific. Or indeed, Kirsty would be happy to take a call from you as well if you had anything specific.
Thanks, Alistair. It's Valerie again. This was great refresher, and I also love the new style that you're delivering this in, and I think that it's going to be very positive, because as you mentioned, majority of people that do attend these tend to be introverts, and so with that, obviously I'd be shocking in a pod, but I noticed when I attended mine, and what I really enjoyed, and that was the face-to-face one, was seeing the people from different industries connect. Also, the vulnerability that they expose themselves to in the room, which they probably have never ever done before. And with that vulnerability became more of the awareness that happened. And from that point, I found that their openness to absorbing what was happening and the value that their companies have put into them really showed. And of course, presentation time, there were a lot of vulnerabilities from people then, but I do like this new idea, so we'll see what happens when we take it back to the business as well.
Yeah, interesting. We had a couple of clients towards the end of last year test both, and most of them have continued on with the pods, even in New Zealand, where they can actually gather. The pods appear to be easier to sell to the participants, and as you say, a smaller, safer, more intimate environment where they can really be vulnerable. All right, fantastic. Thank you very much for the feedback.
Thank you.
And I'm very happy to have more detailed conversations with anybody who feels it's relevant. Thank you very much for your time this morning, and hope you have a wonderfully productive day. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Alistair.